Have you ever felt like you're waiting for something big to happen, but nothing seems to be moving? It's like the pieces are there, but they just won't fall into place. If this message reaches you, it's for a reason, because your breakthrough is closer than you think. In today's video, we're going to explore why periods of silence often come before monumental victories, and how God is preparing you for something beyond what you can imagine. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the idea that there's a time for everything. A time to be silent, a time to act, a time to trust, and a time to see your breakthrough. If you've been feeling stuck or like nothing is happening, stick around because we'll uncover how God uses these moments of silence to prepare us for incredible victories. From the story of Jericho's walls to trusting God's divine timing, this message is here to remind you that your breakthrough is coming, and it's closer than you think. So what can you expect from this video? We'll walk through 1. Why silence can actually be a powerful part of God's plan. 2. How God's strategy worked miracles for the Israelites and can do the same for you. 3. How your obedience in silence could be laying the foundation for victory. 1. There is a time for everything. The Bible, in Ecclesiastes 3:1, beautifully reminds us that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. This means life moves in divine timing, and every moment has a purpose. There's a time to speak and a time to remain silent, a time to act and a time to wait. But when we find ourselves in seasons of waiting, it's easy to feel discouraged, even forgotten. Yet, these moments are not without meaning. They are times of preparation. Imagine planting a seed. Once it's buried in the soil, it disappears from view. You water it and care for it, but for days or even weeks, nothing seems to happen. Beneath the surface, however, that seed is undergoing a transformative process. Roots are sprouting, seeking nutrients, and a strong foundation is being established. Without this hidden preparation, the seed would never grow into a thriving plant. Our lives often mirror this process. Just because we can't see progress doesn't mean nothing is happening. God is working in the unknown, preparing us for what's next. Like the seed, we need to trust the process. Waiting seasons are where character is developed, faith is tested, and growth takes place out of sight. It's in these quiet times that we learn patience, resilience, and the strength to persevere. This preparation may not always be glamorous or immediately rewarding, but it's essential. Just as the seed will eventually break through the soil and blossom, your time will come. When the season shifts, you'll be ready, strengthened by the silent work God has done within you. So, embrace the season you're in, even if it feels like nothing is happening. Remember, God is cultivating something beautiful, preparing you for your time to shine. 2. Breakthrough is coming. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. You may have been praying fervently, waiting patiently, and trusting quietly in the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. But know this: God's timing is always perfect, and what He's preparing for you is beyond anything you can imagine. In this season of waiting, it's easy to feel discouraged or question whether your efforts are making a difference. But the waiting period isn't a waste. It's a time of preparation. Consider the story of the Israelites as they marched around the walls of Jerusalem. For 7 days they circled the city in silence, not knowing exactly when the walls would fall. To an outsider, their actions might have seemed pointless, even foolish. But each step they took in faith was a step closer to the miraculous breakthrough God had promised. On the 7th day, their obedience, faith, and perseverance were rewarded as the walls of Jericho came crashing down. In your own life, each prayer you send up, each act of faith you take, and each moment of trust is bringing you closer to your own victory, even if you don't see immediate results. Remember that divine power is at work behind the scenes. Just as the Israelites couldn't see how God was working during those 7 days, you may not see everything He's doing in this moment, but know that He is setting the stage for your breakthrough. In the silence, God is refining you. He's strengthening your faith, shaping your character, and preparing you to step into the fullness of His plan. So keep moving forward, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Your walls of Jericho will fall, and when they do, the victory will be greater than you ever imagined. Stay faithful, stay patient. Your breakthrough is on the way. 3. The Jericho strategy. Let's talk about Jericho. A story that captivates the imagination with both its grandeur and its profound spiritual lesson. The Israelites, after wandering in the desert for 40 years, finally stood before the fortified city of Jerusalem. Its towering walls were thought to be impenetrable, symbolizing an obstacle far beyond human strength. But God's plan wasn't about brute force or traditional warfare. Instead, he gave Joshua and the Israelites an unconventional and divine strategy, one that defied human logic. For 6 days, they were instructed to march around the walls of Jericho in silence. This wasn't just a walk. It was an act of obedience, trust, and surrender. Imagine the tension, the anticipation, and the thoughts that might have crossed their minds as they circled the city day after day, without a single word or sign of attack. To the outside world, it might have seemed like foolishness, but this was faith in action. Faith that God's ways are higher, that his plans always have a purpose. The silence wasn't passive. It wasn't about inaction or weakness. It was a powerful demonstration of belief in God's timing and instruction. They weren't relying on their own abilities or understanding, but instead putting their full trust in God. On the 7th day, their faith was rewarded. When the trumpets blasted and the people shouted, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, not by human might, but by divine intervention. This story holds a mirror to our lives today. Just like the Israelites, we too may face walls, obstacles that seem impossible to overcome. We may be in a season of silence where we don't see immediate results or understand why God is asking us to wait. But in those moments, we are called to trust, to obey, and to walk in faith. Remember, the walls will fall when God says the time is right. 4. Obedience in silence. The Israelites' silence as they marched around Jericho wasn't a sign of inactivity. It was an act of deep faith. Imagine the scene. Thousands of Israelites silently walking around the walls of Jericho for 6 days, with no visible change, no cracks forming in the walls, and no sign of victory. On the surface, it might have seemed pointless. Why keep marching when nothing is happening? But each silent step was a powerful demonstration of their trust in God's plan. God had commanded them to march, and even though it didn't make sense from a human perspective, they obeyed. This obedience wasn't passive. It was active faith in motion. With every round they completed, they weren't just circling the city. They were circling God's promise, reminding themselves of his faithfulness. In the same way, you might feel like you're marching in circles right now, going through the motions, waiting for a breakthrough and seeing no immediate results. It can feel frustrating, like you're putting in the effort but seeing no progress. But just like with the Israelites, your obedience is not in vain. The silence doesn't mean inactivity. It means trust. Remember, God is often at work behind the scenes, orchestrating things in ways we can't always see. The Israelites didn't see the walls crack until the 7th day, but that didn't mean God wasn't working on day 1 or 2 or 3. It was all part of the process. So, if you feel like you're in a season of waiting, whether it's for a relationship, a career move, or personal growth, trust that your quiet obedience is building something bigger. Just because you can't see the changes yet doesn't mean they're not happening. Your Jericho moment could be just around the corner. Keep marching in faith. 5. Trust God's process, even when you can't see it. Trust that God is working behind the scenes. Progress isn't always immediate or obvious, but every step of faith you take, no matter how small or quiet, is significant in God's plan. Think of the walls of Jericho. The Israelites walked around those seemingly impenetrable walls for 7 days, following God's instruction, even though nothing appeared to be happening. On the surface, it must have looked futile. A simple march around a city wouldn't make its walls fall. But in reality, each faithful step they took weakened the foundation of their obstacle. In your own life, you might not always see immediate results, but that doesn't mean your faith isn't making an impact. God's process often works in ways that we can't immediately grasp. From a human perspective, we expect to see visible progress to confirm we're on the right track. But God doesn't operate on human timelines or logic. His plans are infinitely wise and perfectly timed. He's orchestrating things behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, opening doors, and shifting hearts, even when it looks like nothing is happening. Your role, like the Israelites, is to trust and keep moving forward. When they finally shouted, those walls came crashing down, not because of their strength, but because of their obedience to God's plan. The same is true for you. Your faith-filled actions, whether big or small, are causing cracks in the foundations of the obstacles you face. God's process is steady, powerful, and unfailing. You may not always understand how He's working, but trust that He's moving. The moment of breakthrough might be just around the corner, and when it comes, it will be undeniable that it was God's hand that brought the victory. Keep walking, keep believing, and know that God is never idle in your life. 6. Shout after silence. The story of the Israelites and the walls of Jericho is one of the Bible's most dramatic demonstrations of the power of faith in action. After 6 days of circling the city walls in total silence, the Israelites finally raised their voices in a mighty shout on the 7th day. That shout wasn't just a release of sound. It was a profound declaration of faith, the result of days of disciplined, silent obedience. But here's the fascinating part. Victory didn't come from the shout itself. It came from the combination of their silent steps, unwavering obedience, and trust in God's plan. For 6 days, the Israelites circled Jerusalem, likely confused or even frustrated, but they remained obedient. In the same way, our personal breakthroughs are often preceded by periods of silent endurance. Think about it. The silence before the shout symbolizes those times in life when we follow God's lead without seeing immediate results. It's in those quiet moments of persistence and faith, where nothing seems to be happening, that God is laying the groundwork for something monumental. When the time came for the Israelites to shout, that declaration of faith unleashed divine power, collapsing the impenetrable walls of Jerusalem. Similarly, your breakthrough is often the result of all the quiet, unseen steps of obedience and trust you've taken. It's not just the final action, but everything that led up to it that counts. So, what does this mean for you? Like the Israelites, your moments of silent obedience are preparing you for something bigger. When the time comes to speak out, to make your declaration of faith, the walls of your own challenges, whether they are emotional, spiritual, or physical, will come crashing down. The key is to trust that every silent step, every quiet act of faith, is setting the stage for your victory. When the time comes, your shout will carry the power to bring down any obstacle in your path. 7. Faith grows in silence. Faith is often forged in the quiet moments when life feels still and it seems like nothing is happening. These moments of silence are not a sign of God's absence, but rather His quiet, intentional work in your life. Let's think about the process of building muscle. It doesn't grow through rest alone, but through resistance, the tension of being pushed beyond what seems comfortable. Faith works the same way. It grows and strengthens not in times of ease, but through the challenges of waiting and uncertainty. In these silent seasons, God is preparing you for something greater. Much like how a seed germinates beneath the soil, unseen to the eye but quietly growing roots, your faith is being deeply rooted during periods of stillness. While you may not feel or see the progress, God is working behind the scenes, crafting you into who you are meant to be. This waiting season isn't wasted. It's a time of refinement and preparation. We often mistake silence for inactivity, but just because you can't hear or see God moving doesn't mean He's not present. Just as a sculptor chisels away at a block of stone, revealing the masterpiece hidden within, God is molding you during these quiet moments. Every experience, every emotion, and every waiting period is part of His grand design, shaping your character, your patience, and your trust in Him. When you trust God during the silence, your faith deepens in ways that are impossible to achieve during times of ease. You learn to lean on Him, to surrender your timeline, and to understand that He works in His own perfect timing. Trust that these silent moments are not void of purpose but filled with preparation. God is strengthening you, even if you can't see it just yet. 8. God's strategy overcomes. Just as the Israelites' victory wasn't won by human might, but by God's strategy, your breakthrough won't come through your own strength alone. God's thoughts are higher than ours, and His ways often don't look like what we expect. But when you follow His strategy, obedience, patience, trust, you'll see victories that defy human explanation. The walls of Jericho didn't fall because of human strength, but because of God's divine plan. 9. Shout of victory. When the time comes for your shout of victory, it won't be just another sound. It will be the culmination of every faith-filled step you've taken, even when you couldn't see the outcome. Just like the Israelites at Jericho, who marched silently for 6 days before their triumphant shout brought down the city walls, your victory will come not just from the battle, but from the trust you showed during the silence. Their victory wasn't born the moment the walls crumbled. It was forged in every quiet, obedient step they took around the city. This is the power of faith in action. It's easy to believe when everything is going well, but true faith is refined in moments of waiting and uncertainty. During those times, when you continue to trust God even when it seems like nothing is happening, your faith is building strength. The walls standing in your way may seem unbreakable, but they are no match for the power of your trust in God. Think of your life as a series of battles where some are won through action, while others require patience, endurance, and unwavering faith. The Israelites didn't win by force, strategy, or superior weapons. Their victory was the result of obedience and trust. Just like them, your shout of triumph will be more than a sound of relief. It will be a testament to your faith. When you reach that moment, you'll realize that the real victory wasn't in the breaking of barriers, but in the faith you cultivated along the way. What once seemed impossible, those personal obstacles, fears, and doubts, will fall as easily as Jericho's walls, because faith is more powerful than any obstacle you face. Victory is not just in the outcome, but in the journey of trusting God through the silence. Trust in God's timing. Finally, trust in God's timing. Your breakthrough will come at the perfect moment, just like Jericho's walls fell exactly when God ordained. Even when you can't see it, even when you feel like you've been marching in circles, know that God is moving. Victory is on the horizon, and when it comes, it will be more powerful and more complete than anything you could have imagined. If this message has resonated with you, remember, there's a reason you're hearing it now. Trust the process, stay faithful in the silence, and know that your breakthrough is on its way. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future messages that will inspire and uplift you. Keep walking in faith. Your victory is coming.